The waltz swelled through the gilded halls of the Palais Hofburg, Vienna's most exclusive venue, where a single ticket to tonight's charity gala cost more than Jasmine's yearly rent. She glided between tables with champagne flutes balanced on her tray, moving through the glittering crowd with practiced grace, despite 10 hours on her feet. Her calves burned, but she couldn't afford to show fatigue. Not here, where women in couture gowns and men in bespoke tuxedos looked through her like she was part of the chandeliers, present, ornamental, insignificant. Near the center of the ballroom, the music faltered. A man staggered forward from the champagne bar, his hand clutching his chest. Even in distress, he commanded the room. Sharp Slavic features, dark hair swept back, an aura of controlled danger that made the crowd instinctively part around him. His face had gone ashen. 3 steps into the open floor, his knees gave out. The sound of his body hitting the marble echoed through suddenly hushed conversations, cutting through the orchestra like a gunshot. Jasmine's heart stopped. People froze. Champagne glasses suspended midair, conversations dying mid-sentence. The man gasped, his face contorted in agony, but not a single person moved to help. They looked away. They stepped back. They created a widening circle of avoidance around the fallen man, as if his collapse were contagious. Jasmine's tray slipped from her hands. Crystal shattered against the floor. Her feet were already moving. She dropped to her knees beside him, her black vest pooling around her on the cold marble. Up close, she could see the pallor of his skin, the sheen of sweat on his forehead, the way his pupils had constricted to pinpoints. His eyes, dark, penetrating, even through the fog of pain, fixed on her face with an expression somewhere between shock and something else she couldn't name. "Sir, can you hear me?" Her hands moved automatically, fingers finding the pulse point at his neck. Rapid, irregular, but present. "Someone call an ambulance." The silence that followed her command was deafening. 400 people in designer clothes, and not one reached for a phone. She looked up, meeting the eyes of a woman dripping in diamonds, who immediately turned away, whispering urgently to her companion. "Are you people serious right now?" Jasmine's voice cracked with disbelief. She fumbled for her own phone, an old model with a cracked screen she could barely afford to replace, and dialed emergency services with trembling fingers. The man's hand suddenly shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. His touch was firm despite his obvious pain, and when their eyes met, she saw something that made her breath catch. Not fear. Recognition, perhaps. Or gratitude so desperate it bordered on pleading. Yet he managed his accent thick, Russian. "No, hospital. You're having a heart attack." "Not heart." His grip tightened, fingers digging into her wrist. "Poison." The word sent ice flooding through her veins. Around them, she heard the shuffle of expensive shoes, the whisper of silk and taffeta. People were leaving. Actually leaving rather than help or even witness whatever this was. The circle of avoidance grew wider. "Then you definitely need a hospital." Jasmine tried to pull her wrist free, but he held on. "They'll find me there." His breathing was labored, each word an obvious effort. "Please." Jasmine, her supervisor's voice cut through the moment, like a blade. Franz appeared above them, his face red with anger, and something else she recognized. Fear. He was afraid of this man, even collapsed and vulnerable on the ballroom floor. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "He needs help, Franz. He's been. Get up. Now." Franz's tone left no room for argument. "This isn't your concern. Return to your station immediately." "I'm not leaving him." The words came out before Jasmine could stop them. She'd been raised better than this. To help when others wouldn't. To be the hands and feet of compassion her grandmother had embodied during the civil rights movement. Her mind flashed to the stories her grandmother used to tell, about marching when others stood aside, about acting when silence was easier, about being brave when fear demanded compliance. "Then you're fired." Franz's words were crisp, final, delivered with the casual cruelty of someone who knew he had the power. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. The man's eyes widened slightly. Even through his pain, she saw him processing what she'd just sacrificed. For him, a complete stranger. Fine. Jasmine's hands didn't stop moving, checking his pupils, loosening his bow tie to help him breathe. Her first aid certification from the community center, earned 3 years ago because the course was free and knowledge was power, kicked in automatically. But I'm not moving until proper help gets here. The man's lips moved, forming words too quiet for anyone else to hear. Thank you. And in that moment, kneeling on cold marble in a ruined uniform, surrounded by the indifferent wealthy, Jasmine had no idea she was cradling Viktor Volkov, Vienna's most feared crime lord, the man who controlled half the city's underworld with an iron fist. Or that this single act of mercy would shatter her carefully invisible life and drag her into a world of violence, power, and dangerous, impossible love. The evening had started like any other shift at the Palais, a study in practiced invisibility. Jasmine had arrived 2 hours early to iron her uniform until the white shirt was crisp enough to cut, the black vest perfectly pressed. She'd pulled her hair into the mandatory tight bun, applied minimal makeup, made herself presentable but unremarkable. The agency had been clear. Blend in, smile when spoken to, never make eye contact for too long, and absolutely never draw attention. For 6 hours, she'd been a ghost in the gilded halls. She'd watched women in gowns worth more than her yearly salary complain about the champagne temperature. She'd endured men in hand-tailored tuxedos snapping their fingers at her like she was a dog. One elderly Austrian countess had actually grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks, demanding to know why you people couldn't move faster. Jasmine had smiled, apologized in perfect German, and continued serving. This was survival. This was the price of the paycheck that kept her tiny studio apartment and sent money home to her sick mother in Lyon. Invisibility was safety. Being seen meant being targeted, criticized, or worse, being sent home without pay for attitude problems. But now she was on her knees on cold marble, Victor's labored breathing the only sound to her world, and invisibility was no longer an option. His pulse stuttered under her fingers, irregular, weakening. His lips had taken on a bluish tint. Poison, he'd said, which meant cardiac arrest was imminent if she didn't act. I need to start compressions, she said, already positioning her hands on his sternum. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, steady, authoritative, nothing like the soft, deferential tone she'd used all evening. Victor's eyes focused on her with surprising clarity. Do it. She interlaced her fingers, locked her elbows, and began. Hard and fast, just like the training videos had shown. His expensive jacket wrinkled under her palms. With each compression, she counted silently, maintaining the rhythm that might keep him alive. The crowd watched in horrified fascination, but no one came closer. No one offered help. They stood in their diamond necklaces and silk bow ties, spectators at a tragedy they refused to touch. After 30 compressions, she tilted his head back to check his airway. Stay with me, she commanded, her face inches from his. Don't you dare die on me. Something flickered in his eyes, amusement, maybe, or respect. Bossy, he managed. Quiet. Save your strength. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. But before the ambulance could arrive, the police burst through the ballroom's grand entrance, 3 officers with hands already on their weapons, scanning the scene with hard eyes. The lead officer, a broad-shouldered man with a scar across his jaw, zeroed in on Jasmine immediately. Step away from him. Hands where I can see them. Jasmine's stomach dropped. I'm helping him. He's been poisoned. I said step away. The officer advanced, hand now gripping his holstered weapon. Now. Around them, the crowd murmured. She caught fragments of whispered conversations. I saw her give him something earlier. She was standing near his table. You know how they are. Terror flooded through her. This was how it happened. This was how helping someone became a crime when you were the wrong color in the wrong place. Officer, I'm a witness. A woman's voice called out, the same diamond-draped woman who'd looked away earlier. This girl was serving drinks. She had access. I didn't do anything, Jasmine's voice cracked. I'm trying to save his life. The officer grabbed her arm, yanking her away from Victor. She stumbled, her knees screaming from the sudden movement. You're coming with us for questioning. Wait. Victor's voice cut through the chaos, stronger than it should have been. He'd pushed himself up on one elbow, his face still ashen but his eyes blazing with authority. She had nothing to do with this. Sir, we need to secure the scene. Touch her again, Victor said, each word deliberate despite his labored breathing, and I will end your career before sunrise. The officer hesitated, clearly recognizing Victor even if Jasmine didn't. Fear flashed across his face. The ballroom's main doors crashed open again. 3 men in dark suits moved through the crowd with military precision, people scattering before them like birds before a predator. The man in front was tall, blonde, with ice-blue eyes that cataloged everything in seconds. He dropped to Victor's side, his hand going to his boss's shoulder. Sir. His accent was Russian, but his German was flawless. We need to move you. Now. Alexei, Victor managed. The girl comes with us. Alexei's gaze snapped to Jasmine, assessing, calculating, cold. Sir, that's not. Non negotiable. Victor's hand found Jasmine's wrist again, his grip weak but insistent. She saved me when no one else moved. She comes. The lead police officer stepped forward. This woman is a person of interest in. Alexei stood to his full height, and suddenly the officer's bluster evaporated. Whatever unspoken message passed between them made the policeman step back, hands raised in surrender. Of course, Alexei. My apologies. A misunderstanding. Within seconds, Victor was being lifted by his men, Jasmine pulled along by his grip on her wrist. Franz appeared in her peripheral vision, sputtering protests that died the moment Alexei glanced his way. They moved through the ballroom like a ship cutting through water, the crowd parting in silence. Jasmine's mind reeled. Who was this man that police backed down? That her supervisor went pale and silent? Outside, a black Mercedes SUV idled at the curb, engine running. They bundled Victor into the back seat, and before Jasmine could protest, she was pushed in beside him. The door slammed. The SUV pulled away from the Palais, leaving behind the lights and music and her entire carefully constructed life. Alexei turned from the front passenger seat, his ice-blue eyes pinning her in place. Do you know who you just saved? Jasmine's mouth went dry. Victor's head rested against the seat beside her, his breathing slightly easier now but his eyes closed. In the dim interior, she could see the sharp lines of his face, the power in his features even in weakness. No, she whispered. Viktor Volkov. Alexei watched her face carefully, waiting for recognition. You've heard the name? She had. Everyone in Vienna had. The Russian who controlled the eastern districts. The man the newspapers called the Wolf. The crime lord who made people disappear. Oh God. Jasmine pressed back against the leather seat, her heart hammering. Oh God, what did I do? Victor's eyes opened, finding hers in the darkness. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile. You saved a monster, he said softly. And now, Golyabushka, you belong to me. The SUV pulled into an underground garage beneath a building Jasmine didn't recognize, somewhere in Vienna's 3rd district where she'd never had reason to visit. The fluorescent lights flickered as Alexei's men moved with practiced efficiency, extracting Victor from the vehicle and rushing him through reinforced steel doors that looked like they belonged in a bank vault. Jasmine followed because she had no choice, her legs moving on autopilot while her mind screamed at her to run. But run where? She was miles from her apartment, had no phone, it had shattered on the ballroom floor, and no money for a taxi. And more terrifying, she'd just witnessed a crime lord being poisoned. She knew too much. People who knew too much about men like Viktor Volkov didn't just walk away. They descended another level via a service elevator, emerging into what looked like a private medical clinic. The hallway was sterile white, smelling of antiseptic and something else. Money. Perhaps the kind that bought silence and discretion. A woman in surgical scrubs waited by an examination room, her gray hair pulled back, her eyes sharp and knowing. Gunshot, she asked Alexei in clipped German. Poison. Suspected aconite, based on symptoms. The doctor's eyebrows rose fractionally, the only sign of surprise she allowed herself before she gestured them into the room. Victor was already being transferred to a medical bed, monitors beeping to life around him. Jasmine hovered by the door, unsure whether she was a guest, a witness, or a prisoner. You. The doctor pointed at her. What were his symptoms at onset? Jasmine blinked. Chest pain, difficulty breathing, irregular pulse. His pupils were constricted, and he was sweating despite the ballroom being climate-controlled. Cardiac involvement. Timeline? Maybe 10 minutes from collapse to arrival here. I performed CPR for approximately 3 minutes before he regained consciousness. The doctor's expression softened infinitesimally. You may have saved his life.
Akonita acts fast.
Another 5 minutes. She didn't finish, turning instead to Victor. I'm starting activated charcoal and beginning cardiovascular support. You'll need to stay here for observation. No hospitals, Victor said, his voice stronger now. Too exposed. I run this facility precisely because you people refuse proper medical care. The doctor's tone was dry. But yes, you can stay here. Though if you arrest again, I'm calling an ambulance and damn your empire. She worked with brutal efficiency, starting IVs, administering medications, monitoring Victor's vitals while Alexei briefed her in rapid Russian. Jasmine caught maybe 1 word in 3. Her Russian was limited to basic phrases, but the tension in the room needed no translation. After 20 minutes, the doctor stepped back, satisfied. He's stable. The poison didn't reach lethal concentration, likely because whoever administered it miscalculated the dosage, or the timing was off. But it was definitely aconite. Wolfsbane. She paused meaningfully. Someone has a sense of irony, poisoning the wolf with wolfsbane. Victor's jaw tightened. Internal. Has to be. This wasn't a random attack. Alexei swore in Russian, already pulling out his phone. I'll start interrogations immediately. Everyone who had access to your food and drink tonight. Everyone who knew I'd be at that gala, Victor corrected. His eyes found Jasmine, still frozen by the door. Which was invitation only. 300 guests. Any one of them could have been involved. The doctor glanced between them. I'll give you privacy. But you, she pointed at Victor, stay in that bed for at least 6 hours. And you, now pointing at Jasmine, should probably sit down before you pass out. You've gone pale. The moment the door closed, silence descended. Jasmine forced herself to move to the chair in the corner, her legs shaking so badly she nearly missed the seat. Victor watched her with those penetrating dark eyes, and she couldn't tell if she was looking at her savior or her doom. What's your name? He asked quietly. Jasmine. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Jasmine Baptiste. Jasmine. He said it slowly, tasting each syllable. French. Haitian. My family moved to France, then I came here for university. Dropped out when the money ran out. She didn't know why she was telling him this. Shock, maybe. Started working events to survive. And tonight you risked everything for a stranger. Tonight I helped someone who is dying. Jasmine lifted her chin despite her fear. That's what decent people do. Something shifted in Victor's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. Decent people stepped over me. Decent people left me to die rather than risk inconvenience. You're the only one who moved. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Or maybe you're extraordinary. The door opened before Jasmine could respond. Alexei entered, his face grim. We've identified 3 suspects with access and motive. I'm bringing them in for questioning. Dmitri? Victor's voice went cold. Top of the list. He knew your schedule. He's been pushing for more territory, questioning your decisions in front of the others. Alexei's gaze flicked to Jasmine. We need to discuss what to do about her. She saved my life. She's a civilian, a witness, a liability we can't control. Jasmine's stomach dropped. I won't tell anyone.
I swear.
I'll forget this ever happened. You can't. Alexei's voice wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. You were seen helping him. The police questioned you. By tomorrow, every faction in Vienna will know a black waitress saved Viktor Volkov's life. They'll come asking questions. Or worse. What's worse? But Jasmine already knew. The expression on Alexei's face told her everything. Viktor pushed himself up despite the doctor's orders, wincing. She's under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me. Sir, with respect, you're showing weakness by protecting a random civilian. It sends the wrong message. The message is that I protect those who show me loyalty. Viktor's voice carried absolute authority now, the voice of a man who'd built an empire through force of will. She risked her job, her safety, possibly her life to help me. That deserves protection, not elimination. Alexei's jaw worked, clearly wanting to argue, but he nodded curtly. What are your orders? Safe house. Top security. No one knows the location except you and me. Viktor turned to Jasmine. You'll stay there until we identify who's behind this and whether you're a target. I can't just disappear. I have a job, had a job. I have rent due, I have. You'll be compensated. Generously. Viktor's tone softened. Jasmine, I understand this is terrifying. But someone just tried to kill me, and you're now associated with me. If they think you know something, or if they want to hurt me through you, they won't hesitate. The reality crashed over her like cold water. She'd helped a dying man and become entangled in a world of violence she'd only glimpsed in newspapers. How long? A few days. Maybe a week. Until we're certain. And if I refuse? Silence. Viktor held her gaze, and she saw genuine regret there. Then I can't protect you from what comes next. And I would very much like to protect you, Golyabushka. What does that mean? That word. Little dove. His smile was sad. Something pure in a world of predators. Jasmine looked between Viktor, still pale and weak in his medical bed, and Alexei, whose hand never strayed far from the gun under his jacket. She thought about the police officer's ready suspicion, the crowd's whispered accusations, the way violence had erupted so suddenly in that glittering ballroom. Temporary protection only, she heard herself say. Until the threat is gone. Then I go back to my life. Agreed. But even as Viktor said it, even as Alexei made arrangements on his phone, Jasmine knew she was lying to herself. There was no going back. The moment she'd knelt beside Viktor Volkov, her old life had shattered like crystal on marble. And in the deepest part of her heart, the part she didn't want to examine too closely, she wasn't sure she wanted to go back anyway. The safe house was a prison wrapped in luxury. Jasmine woke on the third morning to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Vienna's Baroque skyline, in a bed with sheets that probably cost more than her monthly salary. The apartment was beautiful, hardwood floors, modern furnishings, a kitchen stocked with food she hadn't bought. And she hated every inch of it. 2 guards stood outside her door at all times. Alexei had explained they were for her protection, but protection and imprisonment looked remarkably similar when you couldn't leave without an armed escort. She'd tried on the second day, told the guards, stone-faced men named Ivan and Sergei, that she needed to go to her apartment, collect her things, check her mail. They'd agreed, but followed 3 steps behind her through Vienna's streets like ominous shadows. Every passerby had stared. Every shopkeeper had noticed. By the time she reached her building in the immigrant quarter of Favoriton, her neighbors were watching from windows, whispering. Mrs. Amati from downstairs had grabbed her arm. Jasmine, what trouble are you in? Those men, they look like...
I've fine.
Just some temporary security. But Mrs. Amati's eyes had filled with fear and something worse, disappointment. As if Jasmine had confirmed every stereotype about people who looked like her, ended up tangled with criminals, brought danger to their quiet building. Now, on day 3, Jasmine stood at the window of her gilded cage and made a decision. She pulled on the clothes Alexei had provided, designer labels she'd never heard of, everything perfectly tailored to her measurements in a way that unsettled her, and marched to the door. Ivan stood as she approached. Miss Baptiste.
Do you need something?
I need to leave. Not escorted. Actually leave. That's not possible. I saved your boss's life. I didn't sign a contract. I'm not a prisoner. You're under protection. I don't want protection anymore. Jasmine's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. I want my life back. The one I had before I made the mistake of helping someone. Ivan's expression didn't change, but he pulled out his phone. I need to call Mr. Volkov. Don't bother. I'm leaving. She tried to push past him. His hand, gentle but immovable, stopped her. Miss Baptiste. Please wait. The please was what broke her. Not a command, but a request, delivered with something like sympathy. Jasmine felt tears burning behind her eyes and hated herself for it. She'd survived poverty, racism, loneliness, a whole city that looked through her like she was invisible. She wouldn't cry now. I saved his life, she whispered. Not sign my own away. I know. Ivan's voice was surprisingly kind. But please, let him explain. Victor arrived within the hour. Jasmine heard the commotion in the hallway, Alexei's sharp Russian, multiple footsteps, the rustle of movement. Then a knock, polite and measured, completely at odds with the forcible imprisonment she'd been enduring. Jasmine? May I come in?
She almost said no.
Instead, she opened the door. Victor looked different than he had in the ballroom or the medical facility. He wore dark jeans and a simple black sweater, his hair slightly disheveled, his face still bearing traces of exhaustion from the poisoning. He looked human. That was somehow more terrifying than when he looked like a crime lord. You want to leave? It wasn't a question. I want my life back. I understand. He glanced at Ivan and Sergei. Give us privacy. The guards exchanged looks but obeyed, retreating down the hall. Alexei started to protest. Sir, we haven't cleared. But Victor's single glance silenced him. When they were alone, Victor moved to the windows, staring out at the city. I had a sister.
Katya.
She was 3 years younger than me, and she was everything I wasn't. Kind, optimistic, she believed in the goodness of people. His voice carried an ache that made Jasmine's throat tighten. When I was building my organization, making the choices that turned me into what I am now, she was the only one who still saw me as human. The only one who didn't fear me. Jasmine stayed silent, sensing this was a story he needed to tell. 15 years ago, a rival faction decided the best way to hurt me was through her. They took her from her university campus. Sent me proof they had her. Victor's hands clenched at his sides. I did everything they asked. Gave up territory. Paid ransoms. Humiliated myself. And they killed her anyway. Left her in the Danube for me to find.
Victor.
She was 22 years old. She wanted to be a teacher. He turned to face Jasmine, and the raw pain in his eyes stole her breath. And she died because someone who claimed to love her, me, wasn't strong enough to protect her. That's not your fault, isn't it? His laugh was bitter. I brought violence into her world. I made her a target. I failed her. Jasmine understood suddenly why he'd insisted on protecting her, why the guards, why the safe house. This wasn't about control. It was about a wound that had never healed. I won't let that happen again, Victor said quietly. Especially not to someone who showed me kindness when no one else would. You knelt beside me, Jasmine. You lost your job. You put yourself at risk for a stranger. That's what Katya would have done. And I will not. His voice cracked slightly. I will not let another good person die because of my world. The silence stretched between them, heavy with grief and understanding. Jasmine thought about her grandmother, about the stories of sitting at lunch counters when it was dangerous, of marching when it was easier to stay home, about doing what was right even when it cost everything. "I'm not your sister," she said gently. "I know. And you can't fix what happened to her by protecting me. I know that too." Victor moved closer, but stopped several feet away, giving her space. "But I can try. Please, Jasmine. One more week. We're close to identifying who ordered the poisoning. Once we handle the threat, you'll be free to go. I'll give you money to start over somewhere else if you want. New identity, new city, whatever you need. I don't want to run away from my life. Then I'll make Vienna safe for you again. But please, just a few more days." Jasmine studied his face, seeing past the power and danger to the man beneath. A man shaped by loss and violence, yes, but also by love for a sister he couldn't save. A man capable of grief, which meant he was capable of other things too. Hope, maybe. Redemption. 1 week, she heard herself say. But I need to be able to go outside. Take walks. Feel human. With guards. Discreet ones. Agreed. Victor's shoulders relaxed fractionally. And Jasmine? "I'm sorry. For the cage. For pulling you into this. If I could go back to that ballroom and collapse somewhere else, somewhere you wouldn't see." "Don't." The word came out sharper than she intended. "Don't wish that. You'd be dead. And you'd be free. Free to live with the knowledge that I stood by and did nothing. Free to become like all those people in their designer clothes who stepped over you." Jasmine shook her head. "I'd rather be here, terrified and trapped, than be that person. At least I can still look at myself in the mirror." Something shifted in Victor's expression. Wonder, perhaps, or the beginning of something deeper. "You're remarkable. Do you know that?"
"I'm stubborn."
"There's a difference."
"No."
"You're remarkable." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Tomorrow, if you want, I could show you the city. The parts tourists don't see. Consider it an apology for the imprisonment. With guards. With me. Which is arguably more dangerous." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Despite everything, the fear, the anger, the surreal nightmare her life had become, Jasmine found herself smiling back. "Tomorrow, then." After he left, she stood at the window watching Vienna's lights begin to glow in the dusk. She was still trapped. Still terrified. But she'd seen something in Viktor Volkov that she suspected few people ever glimpsed, his humanity, broken and scarred but still present beneath the monster's skin. And against all logic, all self-preservation, she wanted to see more. 2 weeks dissolved into a strange rhythm. Jasmine woke in the safe house, took carefully supervised walks through Vienna's parks with Ivan trailing at a respectful distance, returned to read books from Victor's extensive library. He visited almost daily, sometimes for hours, sometimes just briefly to check on her welfare. They talked about everything except the obvious, the investigation, the danger, what would happen when this temporary protection ended. She learned he spoke 5 languages, had never finished university, loved classical music, but couldn't carry a tune. He learned she'd studied literature before dropping out, that her mother still lived in Lyon and thought Jasmine worked as a translator, that she'd always dreamed of opening a bookshop cafe where people from different worlds could meet over coffee and stories. "Like we're meeting now," Victor had said, and the weight of those words hung between them, unspoken possibilities neither dared name. On the 14th night, he appeared at her door holding grocery bags instead of his usual guarded expression. "I'm cooking dinner," he announced. "If you're willing to risk food poisoning on top of everything else." Jasmine blinked. "You cook?" "My grandmother insisted," said a man who couldn't feed himself was only half a man. He moved past her into the kitchen, already unpacking ingredients. "Besides, the safe house chef has the night off, and I thought you might be tired of eating alone." She watched him work, fascinated by the transformation. Viktor Volkov, Vienna's most feared crime lord, wearing an apron she hadn't known existed in the apartment, chopping onions with surprising skill. He moved through the kitchen with the same controlled precision he brought to everything, but looser somehow, more at ease. What are you making? Beef stroganoff. Katia's favorite. He glanced up, and the grief in his eyes had softened into something like fondness. She used to say I made it too salty, but she'd eat 3 servings anyway. Tell me about her. Not how she died, how she lived. Victor's hands stilled on the cutting board. Then, slowly, he began to talk. Stories spilled out between the sizzle of beef in the pan and the aroma of sautéing mushrooms. Katia, who'd hidden stray cats in their apartment despite their grandmother's protests. Katia, who'd tutored neighborhood kids in mathematics for free. Katia, who'd once punched a boy twice her size for bullying Victor when they were children. She sounds fierce, Jasmine said, setting the table with the fine china she discovered in the safe house cupboards.
She was.
Just in different ways than me. Victor stirred the cream into the sauce, tasted it, added more paprika. She fought with kindness. I never understood it until someone showed you kindness when you didn't deserve it? Their eyes met across the kitchen. Something like that. Dinner was revelation. The stroganoff was perfect, rich and savory, served over buttered egg noodles with a simple cucumber salad on the side. Victor poured wine, something Russian she couldn't pronounce, and they ate while Vienna's lights glittered through the windows. My grandmother used to make dairy ak, Jasmine said, warming to the wine and the conversation. Black mushroom rice. She'd cook it for special occasions, and the whole apartment would smell like home. She smiled at the memory. She'd tell stories while we ate, about Haiti before the coups, about coming to France, about standing up when the world told you to sit down. She sounds like Katia, a fighter.
She was. Is.
She's in a care facility now. Early dementia. Jasmine's throat tightened. Some days she knows me. Some days I'm a stranger. But she always remembers the stories. Victor reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch was gentle, questioning, giving her space to pull away. She didn't. When did you last let someone take care of you? He asked quietly. The question landed like a physical blow. Jasmine tried to remember, before the university rejection, before the money ran out, before she'd learned that survival meant never showing weakness. I don't remember. Then let me. Tonight, at least. No guards outside the door.
No danger.
Just 2 people sharing a meal. It was a beautiful lie, and they both knew it. But Jasmine found herself nodding, her hand turning under his to lace their fingers together. Just tonight. They moved to the living room after dinner, settling on the sofa with more wine. Victor asked about her favorite books. She asked about his childhood in Moscow. The conversation flowed easy as water, punctuated by laughter that felt stolen from a different life, one where a crime lord and a waitress might simply be a man and a woman discovering each other. You're different than I imagined, Jasmine admitted, wine making her bold. When Alexei told me who you were, I expected a monster? Yes. I am a monster, Jasmine. Don't romanticize what I do. The violence. The blood on my hands. His voice was serious, but his thumb traced circles on her wrist where he still held her hand. I've hurt people. Killed people. Built an empire on fear. I know. She shifted closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. But you also grieve your sister. You cook her favorite meals. You learn 5 languages because knowledge matters. You're not just one thing, Victor. And you, he murmured, his free hand coming up to cup her face, are far too good for this world. Certainly too good for me. Maybe I get to decide that. They were close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel his breath against her lips. The moment stretched, taut with possibility. Victor leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and Jasmine's eyes fluttered closed. The apartment door burst open. They sprang apart as Alexei stormed in, his face grim, 3 armed men at his back. Sir, we need to move.
Now.
Victor was on his feet instantly, the tender man from moments ago replaced by the crime lord. What happened? Dmitri. We have confirmation. Alexei's jaw was tight. He orchestrated the poisoning, and he just made his next move. Hit one of our warehouses. 6 men dead. The temperature in the room plummeted. Jasmine watched Victor's expression shudder into something cold and terrible. Watched his hands, the same hands that had gently held hers minutes ago, curl into fists. Where is he? His compound in Leopoldstadt. He's fortifying, knows we're coming. Good. Victor's voice was ice and razors. Let him prepare. It won't matter. He turned to Jasmine, and she saw the duality of him clearly now, the man who'd cooked her dinner and the monster who would paint Vienna red before morning. Stay here. Ivan and Sergei will protect you. Don't leave this apartment for any reason.
Victor.
This is what I am, Golyabushka. His eyes held hers, dark and fathomless. This is what you saw in me. The violence. The ruthlessness. Are you sure you still want to know this man? She should say no. Should tell him to leave and never come back. Should remember that kindness to his sister's memory didn't erase the blood he'd spilled. Instead, she caught his hand as he turned to leave. Come back alive. Please. Something cracked in his expression, surprise, gratitude, something that looked dangerously like hope. He raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with devastating gentleness. For you, he said, I will. Then he was gone, Alexei and the armed men trailing like wolves following their alpha. The door closed, leaving Jasmine alone with her guards and the remnants of their dinner, a moment of normalcy shattered by the reality of Victor's world. She cleaned the dishes with shaking hands, her lips still tingling from the kiss that almost was, her heart racing with fear for a man she barely knew but couldn't stop wanting to save. Outside, Vienna slept on, unaware that somewhere in its ancient streets, the wolf was going hunting. Victor returned at dawn with blood on his knuckles and death in his eyes. Jasmine had stayed awake all night, pacing the safe house, imagining every terrible outcome. When he walked through the door, alive, unharmed except for the bruises blooming across his hands, relief hit her so hard she nearly collapsed. It's done, was all he said before disappearing into the shower. Alexei filled in the details. 6 of Dmitri's men dead in the warehouse attack. Victor's retaliation had been swift and surgical, the warehouse destroyed, Dmitri's suppliers cut off, his territory seized. But Dmitri himself had escaped. He's cornered now, Alexei explained, his ice-blue eyes unreadable. Dangerous. He'll try something desperate. Then end it, Jasmine said. Why let him run? Because killing an underboss without proof creates internal war. The other captains need to see Dmitri's betrayal, need to choose sides publicly. Alexei studied her. Victor is calling a meeting. Tomorrow night. And he wants you there. Her stomach dropped. Why? Because hiding you makes you look like a guilty secret. But bringing you openly, showing he doesn't fear judgment. Alexei's expression was grudging respect. That's power. It says you matter enough to claim publicly. The next evening, Ivan delivered a dress to her room. Midnight blue silk that fit like it had been made for her body, elegant and expensive and completely unlike anything she'd ever worn. When she emerged, Victor was waiting in a black suit that made him look every inch the crime lord, but his eyes softened when he saw her. You're beautiful, he said simply.
I'm terrified. Good.
Fear keeps you sharp. He offered his arm. Stay close to me. Say nothing unless spoken to directly. And if things turn violent, they won't. You won't let them. His lips curved into something too dark to be a smile. You have too much faith in me, Golyabushka. The meeting was held in a private room of a restaurant Victor owned in Leopoldstadt, the same district he'd seized from Dmitri. 20 men sat around a long table, all hard eyes and harder faces, men who'd built empires on violence. Jasmine felt their stares like brands on her skin as Victor led her to a chair beside his at the table's head. Dmitri sat at the opposite end, and Jasmine's breath caught. He was handsome in a brutal way, sharp Slavic features, blonde hair, cold gray eyes that assessed her like she was livestock. When their gazes met, his lip curled. "So," Dmitri said in Russian-accented German, his voice carrying across suddenly silent conversation. "The mysterious savior. Victor's new. What should we call you, dear? Girlfriend seems too dignified. Pet, perhaps?" The insult landed like a slap. Around the table, men shifted uncomfortably. Victor's hand found Jasmine's under the table, squeezed once, a warning to stay calm. "Her name is Jasmine Baptiste," Victor said, his voice cold and level. "She saved my life when I was poisoned. She is under my protection." How touching. Dmitri leaned back in his chair, performing casualness that didn't reach his eyes. "Though I wonder, Victor, if your judgment has been compromised. You've been distracted lately, making decisions that put your organization at risk." "Careful, Dmitri.
Why?
We're among friends here. We can speak honestly." Dmitri addressed the table now, playing to the audience. "Our leader brings a civilian, a foreigner, no less, into our inner circle. He starts a war over a warehouse because his pride was wounded. He shows weakness by elevating this woman to a position she hasn't earned." Several men nodded slightly. Jasmine's fingernails bit into her palms. "She earned her position by acting when you and every other coward in that ballroom stood frozen," Victor said. "She has more courage in her smallest finger than you've shown in 15 years of service." Dmitri's eyes flashed. "Service? I've bled for this organization. Killed for it. Built half your empire while you've been playing house with your little." He used a Russian word Jasmine didn't know, but the sneering contempt needed no translation. Victor moved so fast Jasmine barely saw it. One moment he was seated, the next he had Dmitri slammed against the wall, forearm across his throat, gun pressed under his chin. "Say it again," Victor growled.
Please.
"Give me an excuse." The room erupted. Men rose from their seats, hands moving toward weapons. Alexei barked orders in Russian, his own gun drawn. Jasmine sat frozen, watching the careful balance of power teeter toward chaos.
Victor.
Alexei's voice cut through the tension. "Not like this. Not without proof. He just disrespected me in front of my captains. That's proof enough. Of insubordination, not of the poisoning." Alexei moved closer, speaking low and urgent. "You kill him now, they'll say it was about the girl. That you've lost perspective. Is that the message you want to send?" Jasmine watched Victor's jaw work, watched him weigh violence against strategy. Finally, he released Dmitri, stepping back, but keeping the gun level. "You want proof?" Victor's voice was deadly calm. "The doctor who treated me found aconite in my blood. Only 6 people knew I'd be at that gala. I've eliminated 4. That leaves you and Alexei." He glanced at his second in command. "And I trust Alexei with my life." "Circumstantial," Dmitri spat, rubbing his throat. "Perhaps. But here's what's not circumstantial. You've been skimming from the Eastern Territories for 8 months. You've been recruiting my men to your faction. You've been positioning yourself for a coup." Victor pulled a folder from his jacket, threw it on the table. "Financial records, wiretaps, surveillance photos. I have documentation of every betrayal." The room went silent as men examined the evidence. Jasmine watched their expressions shift, surprise, anger, the cold calculation of predators deciding which alpha to follow. "So here's my offer," Victor continued. "You leave Vienna tonight.
Take nothing.
Go to Moscow, Prague, wherever you want. But you leave my city, my organization, and you never come back. And if I refuse, then I stop being merciful." Dmitri looked around the table, searching for allies. He found none. The evidence was damning, and more importantly, Victor had proven he was still the stronger wolf. Dmitri's attempted power play had failed. "This isn't over," Dmitri said, but they both knew it was a hollow threat.
Yes.
"It is." Victor holstered his gun. "You have until sunrise." After that, I won't be reasonable. Dmitri left, two of his remaining loyalists trailing behind. The moment the door closed, the tension broke. The remaining captains pledged their loyalty, some enthusiastically, others with the pragmatism of men who recognized power when they saw it. An hour later, Jasmine and Victor stood alone in the restaurant's private parking garage. Her hands were still shaking. "I'm sorry," Victor said, "for exposing you to that. For what he called you. For all of it. Don't apologize." Jasmine turned to face him. "If being with you means facing this, I need to see all of it. Not the sanitized version. Not you protecting me from reality. All of it." "Jasmine, I'm not fragile, Victor. I've survived poverty, racism, a whole city that treats me like I'm invisible. Your world is dangerous, but I'm not some delicate thing that needs to be sheltered. I know that. But wanting to protect you isn't about thinking you're weak. It's about," he struggled for words. "When Dmitri spoke to you that way, I wanted to put a bullet in his skull. The only thing that stopped me was knowing it would hurt you to see that violence. So, you're protecting me from yourself? Maybe. Yes." Victor's hands clenched at his sides. "I don't want you to see the worst parts of me and realize you made a mistake saving my life." Jasmine stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him, to see the vulnerability beneath his dangerous exterior. "I've already seen the worst parts, and I'm still here. You shouldn't be. But I am." She reached up, her hand cupping his jaw. "I'm here, Victor.
By choice.
Stop trying to scare me away." The last thread of his control snapped. Victor pulled her against him, his mouth crashing down on hers with desperate hunger. The kiss was everything their almost kiss had promised, fire and need, and the collision of two people who'd been circling each other for weeks. Jasmine responded with equal fervor, her fingers threading through his hair, her body molding to his. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "This is dangerous," he whispered. "I know. Dmitri was right about one thing. You make me weak."
No.
Jasmine's voice was fierce. "I make you human. There's a difference." He kissed her again, softer this time, tender in a way that made her heart ache. When he pulled back, his eyes held hers with devastating intensity. "Then stay human with me, Golyabushka. Even when I don't deserve it. Only if you promise the same."
Deal.
The call came at 3 in the morning. The care facility in Lyon, the night nurse's apologetic voice explaining that her grandmother had taken a turn. Pneumonia. Her condition was deteriorating. If Jasmine wanted to see her while she was still lucid, she should come soon. Victor found her in the kitchen, still in her nightgown, staring at her phone with tears streaming down her face. "I have to go to Lyon."
Today. Now.
"Of course." He was already pulling out his own phone. "I'll arrange a private flight, full security detail."
No.
Jasmine's voice was firm despite the tears. "I'm going alone. Like a normal person. On a train." "Jasmine, Dmitri is still out there. We don't know where he is or what he's planning." "My grandmother is dying, Victor. I'm not letting your war with Dmitri keep me from saying goodbye." She met his eyes, saw the conflict there, his need to protect her warring with his respect for her autonomy. "I'll take guards if you insist. But I'm going." They compromised. Jasmine would visit her grandmother at the Vienna care facility where Victor had quietly transferred her 2 weeks ago. Closer, safer, with better medical care than Lyon could provide. A gift he'd never mentioned, had simply arranged through intermediaries so she wouldn't feel indebted. "You moved her here?" Jasmine's voice broke. "When? When you told me she was alone in that state-run facility with overworked nurses who barely spoke to her. When I saw you crying after phone calls because she didn't remember you." Victor touched her face gently. "She's your grandmother. Of course I moved her." The care facility was in Doblang, Vienna's 19th district, all manicured gardens and discreet luxury. Victor insisted on a full security detail, Ivan and Sergei in the car with her, 2 more vehicles trailing behind. Overkill, Jasmine thought, but she was too grateful about her grandmother to argue. The visit was bittersweet. Her grandmother recognized her immediately, lucid and sharp in a way she hadn't been in months. They talked for 2 hours about the catering business, about Victor, about choices and consequences, and love that demanded courage. "You're happy, child?" her grandmother asked, gripping Jasmine's hand with surprising strength. "Terrified. But yes, happy."
Good.
Happiness is worth being terrified for. Jasmine left the facility at noon, her heart full and aching, stepping into Vienna's crisp autumn air. Ivan opened the car door for her, Sergei already scanning the street with professional vigilance. The first shot shattered the car's rear window. Jasmine dove instinctively as Ivan shoved her down, his body covering hers. Sergei returned fire, his gun barking sharp reports that echoed off the residential buildings. More shots from multiple directions, a coordinated attack. The backup cars screeched forward, Victor's men pouring out with weapons drawn. "Stay down," Ivan shouted, but a bullet caught him in the shoulder, and he grunted, blood blooming across his jacket. Jasmine's training kicked in, the emergency protocols Victor had insisted she learned despite her protests. She crawled toward the driver's side, yanked the door open, dragged Ivan with her into the meager cover the engine block provided. Her hands found the emergency med kit under the seat, her fingers remembering the muscle memory from countless drills. "Pressure on the wound," she told Ivan, her voice surprisingly steady. "Stay with me." Around them, the firefight intensified. She heard Sergei scream, saw him go down. The backup guards were engaged with attackers on both sides of the street. At least 8 men, Dimitri's remaining loyalists, making their desperate play. A man appeared around the front of the car, gun raised. Jasmine didn't think. She grabbed the knife from the med kit and threw it. The blade caught him in the thigh, not lethal, but enough to make him stumble. Ivan, even wounded, put 2 bullets in his chest. "Good throw," Ivan managed through gritted teeth. Then there was a lull in the gunfire, an eerie silence. Jasmine heard footsteps approaching, heard a voice she recognized from the organization meeting. "Send the girl out, and we leave the rest of you alive." Ivan tried to raise his gun, but his hand was shaking too badly. Jasmine looked at him, at the blood pooling beneath Sergei's still form, at the carnage unfolding because she'd insisted on visiting her grandmother. "This is my fault," she whispered. "No." Ivan started, but she was already pulling out her phone, dialing Victor with trembling fingers. He answered on the first ring. "Jasmine, Doblang, the care facility, Dimitri's men. Ivan and Sergei are down, I'm trapped." Her voice finally broke. "Victor, they're dying because of me." "How many attackers?" 8, maybe more. "I can't. I'm 7 minutes away. Stay alive for 7 minutes.
Can you do that?
I don't know. You can. You're the woman who tripped a fleeing criminal while zip-tied. You're the woman who threw a knife with perfect accuracy under fire. You're mine, and you will survive this." His voice was steel and certainty and barely leashed violence. 7 minutes, Golyabushka. Then I'm burning this whole district down. The call disconnected. Jasmine clutched the phone, then checked Ivan's wound again. The bleeding had slowed. The bullet had missed the artery. Sergei wasn't so lucky. She could see from here that he was gone. 6 minutes. The attackers were advancing, using parked cars for cover. Jasmine heard commands in Russian, heard them coordinating. The remaining guards, she counted 3 still standing, were outnumbered and outgunned. 5 minutes. She found Ivan's backup weapon, checked the magazine like Victor had taught her. 15 rounds. She'd fired a gun exactly twice, both times at a shooting range with Victor's patient instruction. 4 minutes. The first attacker rounded their car. Jasmine fired 3 times, hands shaking so badly she missed all 3 shots. But the noise made him duck back, bought precious seconds. 3 minutes. "I'm sorry," she told Ivan. "I should have listened. I shouldn't have left the safe house." "You visited your dying grandmother. That's not wrong." "They are." Ivan's face was pale, but his eyes were fierce. Don't you dare blame yourself for their evil. 2 minutes. The sound of engines roaring. Multiple vehicles approaching at high speed. For a horrible moment, Jasmine thought it was reinforcements for Dimitri's men. Then she heard Victor's voice, amplified through a speaker, speaking Russian in a tone that promised death. 1 minute. The attackers panicked, tried to scatter. Too late. Victor's convoy surrounded them like wolves surrounding prey. What followed was brutal and efficient. Victor's men moving with military precision, cutting down Dimitri's loyalists with overwhelming force. Victor himself emerged from the lead vehicle, and Jasmine had never seen him like this. Absolute fury contained in lethal control. He didn't even use his gun. His hands were enough, brutal and precise, breaking the man who demanded Jasmine's surrender. Then he was running toward her, dropping to his knees beside the car, pulling her into his arms with hands that had just dealt death, but touched her with impossible gentleness. You're alive. You're alive. He said it like a prayer, like a benediction, his hands checking her for injuries, his face pressed into her hair. Sergei's dead. Ivan's shot. All because
No.
Victor pulled back, gripped her face between his hands. Hands covered in blood that wasn't his. All because Dimitri is a coward who attacks the innocent. This is not your fault. I can't do this. Jasmine was sobbing now, the adrenaline crashing, the horror of the past 10 minutes hitting her all at once. I can't be the reason people die. Good people like Sergei, who is just doing his job. You're not the reason. Dimitri is. And I'm ending this. Tonight. Tomorrow. I don't care what it takes. Victor's voice was savage promise. He dies, Jasmine. Slowly. Painfully. For Sergei. For this. For every second of fear he put you through. Alexei appeared, already coordinating cleanup, calling in their doctors, dealing with the approaching police sirens. Victor lifted Jasmine bodily, carried her to his car despite her protests. In the back seat, she collapsed against him, both of them covered in other people's blood, both shaking from adrenaline and rage and relief. Victor held her like she was the only real thing in a world gone mad. I love you, she heard herself say. The words torn out by terror and truth. I love you, and I'm so tired of being afraid. I love you too. Victor's lips pressed to her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. And after this, I swear to you, you'll never have to be afraid again.
Dmitri dies.
His allies scatter. This ends. Promise me something. Anything. When you end it, when you kill him. Jasmine pulled back to meet his eyes. Make it count. Make it mean something. Not just revenge. Justice for Sergei. For all of us. Victor's smile was dark and full of terrible promise. Justice. I can do that. And watching his face, seeing the barely controlled violence coexisting with his love for her, Jasmine understood fully what she'd chosen, a man capable of terrible things, who would do terrible things to protect her, who loved her enough to let that love make him ruthless instead of cruel. It should have terrified her. Instead, she held him tighter and chose him all over again. The attack came 3 days after the meeting. Not on Victor, on Jasmine. She'd been walking through the Nashmarkt with Ivan shadowing her, picking through fresh produce and pretending at normalcy. The knife came from nowhere, a flash of silver, a burning line across her shoulder blade. She stumbled, caught herself, spun to see a young man already melting into the crowd. Ivan tackled him within seconds, but the message had been delivered. Dimitri hadn't left Vienna, and he was done playing games. Victor arrived at the safe house before the doctor finished stitching her wound, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. He didn't speak until they were alone, and when he did, his voice was raw. This ends now. Tonight. I'm going to kill him.
No.
Jasmine winced as she pulled on a clean shirt. That's what he wants. To goad you into acting rashly, to make you look unstable in front of your organization. I don't care what they think. He put a knife to you. A superficial cut.
Fine.
You're bleeding because of me. Victor's control cracked. Because you saved my life, and now you're a target. Katia all over again, and I can't. His voice broke. I can't lose you too. The confession hung in the air between them. Jasmine stood, crossed to him, took his face in her hands despite the pain in her shoulder. Then don't push me away. Protect me by letting me stand with you, not by trying to fight this alone. He pulled her into his arms, careful of her injury, and buried his face in her hair. They stood like that for a long moment, breathing together, finding steadiness in each other's presence. When he pulled back, his expression had shifted into something resolved and slightly terrified. Marry me. Jasmine blinked. What? Marry me. Legally, officially. It would give you protection under Austrian law, make you untouchable in ways my word alone can't. It would legitimize your position in my world, make clear to everyone that harming you means war. He was speaking quickly now, as if afraid she'd interrupt. I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other. But, Victor, we've known each other 3 weeks. I know you ran toward danger to save a stranger while everyone else watched. I know you have more courage than men I fought beside for years. I know you see me as human instead of monster, and that makes me want to be worthy of that vision. His hands framed her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. I know I'd burn the world to ashes to keep you safe. That's enough for me. That's not love, Victor. That's gratitude and guilt, and it's love. The certainty in his voice stopped her. Maybe it started as gratitude, but it's not that anymore. When you're not here, I count the hours until I see you. When you smile, my whole world gets lighter. When Dimitri put that knife to you, I felt my heart stop. That's love, Jasmine. Inconvenient, terrifying, completely irrational love. She wanted to say yes. The word was right there on her tongue. Easy, tempting, a leap into the unknown. But her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. All the lessons about not letting desperation make you small, about claiming your power even in impossible situations.
No.
Victor's face fell. I understand. Let me finish. Jasmine stepped back, needing space to think clearly. I'll stand with you. Publicly, openly, I'll be acknowledged as yours. But marriage? That's not protection, Victor. That's a cage with prettier bars. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? You want to lock me in legally, make me safe by making me yours. But I don't want to be anyone's possession. Not even yours. She lifted her chin. So here's my counteroffer. We do this together as partners. I get the protection, the public acknowledgement, all of it. But no marriage until this is over and you prove you can change. Change how? Show me your empire can be more than violence. Show me you can lead without ruling through fear. Show me the man who cooked me dinner and grieved his sister is stronger than the monster who wants to paint Vienna red. Jasmine's voice softened. Show me you're choosing me not because I remind you of Katia or because you feel guilty, but because you genuinely want a future where we both get to be whole people. Victor stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. You're right. About all of it. A hint of a smile touched his lips. You're also terrifying when you negotiate. Good. You should be a little afraid of me. I am. Constantly. He pulled her close again, careful of her wound. We do this your way. Partners. I'll prove I can change. And when this is over, when Dimitri is handled and you're safe, I'll ask again properly. And I'll consider it. Properly. They sealed the agreement with a kiss, tender and promising and tinged with the metallic taste of danger they couldn't quite escape. The news of their relationship went public the next day. Alexei arranged a carefully orchestrated dinner at one of Vienna's most visible restaurants. Victor and Jasmine photographed together, his arm around her waist, no attempt to hide or minimize her presence. The message was clear, she was his, and harming her meant war. The reaction was swift and brutal. Jasmine's phone, a new secure device Victor had provided, exploded with messages. Friends from the service industry asking if she was insane, if she knew what Victor was. Former university classmates sending news articles about his alleged crimes. Her mother calling from Lyon, voice tight with fear and disappointment. What have you done, Jasmine? This man, he is dangerous. You need to come home. Ma'am, I can't. It's complicated. It's not complicated. You've thrown your life away for a criminal. Your grandmother would be ashamed. The words cut deeper than Dimitri's knife. Jasmine ended the call with shaking hands, tears burning behind her eyes. Victor found her an hour later, sitting alone in the dark. He didn't speak, just sat beside her and waited. Everyone thinks I'm insane, she finally said. My mother, my friends, they think you've manipulated me, or I'm after your money, or I've lost my mind. Have you lost my mind?
Probably.
But it was my choice to lose it. We can end this. I can make a statement, say it was exaggerated, distance you publicly.
No.
Jasmine turned to face him. I meant what I said. I stand with you. Let them think what they want. But the cost weighed on her. That night, unable to sleep, she called her grandmother's care facility. The night nurse put her through, warning that it was a bad day, that her grandmother might not recognize her. Grandmere? It's Jasmine. Silence. Then, miraculously, Jasmine, child. It's late. What's wrong? The familiar voice, lucid and loving, broke something in her. The whole story spilled out. The gala, the collapse, Victor, the danger, the impossible choice she'd made to stay when everyone said to run. Her grandmother listened without interrupting. When Jasmine finished, the old woman was quiet for so long she thought the connection had dropped. Grandmere? Love isn't always convenient, child. Her grandmother's voice was soft but firm. Lord knows I didn't choose convenience when I married your grandfather. A black man marrying a white woman in the 60s, people said we were crazy. Said it would never work. But here's what matters. Was it honest? Did you choose with your eyes open? Yes. Then hold your head high. The world will judge you regardless. Might as well be judged for something that makes your heart beat faster. A pause. Just one question. Does he make you feel small? Or does he make you brave? Jasmine thought about Victor teaching her Russian phrases, about him listening to her opinions on his business, about the way he'd accepted her counterproposal instead of demanding his way. He makes me brave. Then he's worth fighting for. The rest is just noise. After they hung up, Jasmine returned to the living room where Victor waited, trying to pretend he hadn't been pacing. My grandmother says you're worth fighting for, she told him. Relief flooded his features. She's never met me. She knows me. That's enough. Jasmine moved into his arms. Now, let's end this with Dimitri. I want my life back. Our life. Victor's embrace tightened. Tomorrow night. I'm setting a trap. He won't be able to resist. What kind of trap? The kind where the bait is willing. He pulled back to meet her eyes. But only if you agree. I won't risk you without your consent. Jasmine thought about courage and choice, about her grandmother marching when it was dangerous, about the woman who taught her that sometimes the bravest thing was refusing to be invisible. Tell me the plan, she said. And Victor smiled, fierce and proud and desperately in love with a woman brave enough to stand beside a monster and demand he become a man. The plan was simple in theory, terrifying in execution. Jasmine would attend a gallery opening in the first district, public, visible, seemingly vulnerable. Victor would be conspicuously absent, called away on urgent business that Alexei had carefully leaked through channels they knew Dimitri monitored. Only 2 guards would accompany her instead of the usual 4. An obvious opening for a desperate man to exploit. He'll take the bait, Victor said as they reviewed the plan for the 3rd time. He's cornered, running out of allies and money. You're his last chance to hurt me. And you're certain your people will be close enough? Jasmine's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she fastened her earrings, elegant sapphires that concealed a microphone and tracker. Alexei will be inside the gallery. I'll be 2 blocks away with a full team. The moment Dimitri moves, we move. Victor caught her hands, stilling them. But if you've changed your mind, we find another way. I won't force you into this. I haven't changed my mind. Jasmine met his eyes. But I am scared.
Good.
Fear keeps you alert. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. Gentle and reverent, like she was something precious he might break. I won't let him hurt you. I swear it. I know. But Victor? If something goes wrong, if you have to choose between catching him and saving me, there is no choice. You come first. Always. The gallery was pretentious contemporary art, abstract paintings that cost obscene amounts and meant nothing to Jasmine. She wandered through the white-walled space, champagne flute in hand, hyper-aware of every person around her. Alexei browsed nearby, playing the disinterested art collector, his hand never far from the gun under his jacket. An hour passed. Then, too. Jasmine began to wonder if Dmitri had seen through the trap. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing everything in red. People gasped, murmured confusion. Alexei was already moving toward her, but 3 men materialized from the crowd, Dmitri's remaining loyalists. Jasmine saw the glint of a knife, felt rough hands grab her arms, tasted copper fear on her tongue. Don't fight, one hissed in Russian-accented German. Come quietly and you don't get hurt. Jasmine let herself be pulled toward the service exit, but her mind was racing. Victor had prepared her for this, what to do, how to buy time, where to position herself. The tracker in her earring was broadcasting her location. Help was coming. She just had to survive until it arrived. They dragged her into a waiting van. Her heart hammered as they zip-tied her wrists, threw a hood over her head. The van lurched into motion, and Jasmine forced herself to breathe, to count seconds, to stay calm. 15 minutes. That's what Victor had said. 15 minutes maximum from grab to rescue. She counted to 900, then started over. When the van stopped and they pulled her out, she stumbled on purpose, making herself seem more frightened and helpless than she was. They hauled her into a building, abandoned from the smell of mildew and rust. A warehouse, probably. Vienna had dozens of them along the Danube. The hood came off. Dmitri stood before her, looking worse than he had at the meeting, unshaven, eyes wild, the desperation of a cornered animal radiating from him. The little pet, he sneered. Victor's weakness, delivered right to me. Jasmine forced herself to meet his eyes. You really think this will work? You really think Victor will negotiate with you? I think he'll give me anything to get you back alive. Dmitri circled her like a predator. Safe passage out of Vienna. Money. Maybe even his territory. All for his precious little. You don't understand him at all. Jasmine's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. You think I'm his weakness? I'm his reason to be ruthless. You didn't take his vulnerability. You took the one thing that makes him completely unforgiving. Dmitri's hand cracked across her face. Pain exploded across her cheekbone, but Jasmine didn't cry out. She'd been hit before, by her ex, by men who thought a waitress was fair game. She knew how to survive it. Brave words for someone tied up in an empty warehouse. Stupid location for someone who's being tracked. Jasmine smiled through the blood on her lip. You've got maybe 3 minutes before this place is surrounded. Dmitri's eyes widened. He grabbed one of his men. Search her. Now. They found the earring tracker within seconds. Dmitri swore viciously, already moving toward the exit. Kill her. We're leaving. The man raised his gun. Jasmine threw herself sideways as the shot rang out, the zip tie on her wrists biting deep, but her body already rolling behind a concrete pillar. The bullet sparked off metal where her head had been a second before. Then the warehouse doors exploded inward. Victor came through like an avenging angel, Alexei and a dozen armed men flanking him. Gunfire erupted, sharp cracks echoing in the empty space. Jasmine stayed low, her heart in her throat, watching Victor move with lethal precision through the chaos. Dmitri ran for the back exit, but Jasmine was closer. Without thinking, she stuck out her bound hands and caught his ankle. He went down hard, his gun skittering across the concrete. "You bitch." Victor was there before Dmitri could finish, hauling him up by the collar, pressing a gun under his chin. For a moment, Jasmine thought he'd pull the trigger. Wanted him to, maybe. But Victor's eyes found hers across the warehouse, and something in her expression made him pause. "Not like this," she said quietly. "Not in front of me." Victor's jaw worked. Then he slammed Dmitri against the wall, zip-tied his hands with brutal efficiency, and shoved him toward Alexei.
"Take him."
"Let the others decide his fate. I want a vote. Let everyone see what happens to traitors." It was mercy of a kind, letting the organization handle Dmitri instead of executing him personally. Jasmine understood it was for her, this small concession to civilization in a world built on violence. Victor crossed to her, cutting the zip ties with a knife, his hands gentle as he examined her split lip and bruising cheek. "You're hurt."
"I'm alive."
"Thanks to you. Thanks to you." His voice was rough with emotion. "You tripped him. Bought the seconds we needed. We're partners, remember? I pull my weight." He kissed her then, desperate and claiming, tasting of gunpowder and relief. When they broke apart, the warehouse was empty except for Alexei standing guard at the door, discreetly looking away. "It's done," Victor said against her hair. "Dimitri's finished. The organization will vote tomorrow, but the outcome isn't in doubt. You're safe now." Jasmine sagged against him, the adrenaline draining away and leaving her shaking. "I was terrified. I know. I heard everything through the wire. When he hit you," Victor's arms tightened. "I almost killed him then. Protocol be damned. But you didn't. You chose the harder path because I asked." She pulled back to look at him. "That's the man I'm falling in love with. Not the monster. The man who can choose mercy even when violence would be easier. I'm not a good man, Jasmine. Tonight doesn't change that. I've done terrible things, and I'll probably do more. I know. But with me, you want to be better. That's enough to start with. Then I'll be better. Starting tomorrow." Victor's smile was tentative, hopeful, almost shy, an expression she'd never seen on the wolf's face before. Starting right now. They left the warehouse together, Jasmine leaning on Victor's strength, Victor tempered by Jasmine's mercy. Behind them, Dimitri's shouts echoed into silence. Ahead, Vienna glittered in the darkness, a city that had witnessed their impossible beginning and would now watch their improbable future unfold. In the car, Victor held her close, and Jasmine let herself finally believe they might actually survive this. Together. Not unscathed, she'd carry the bruises, he'd carry the blood on his hands. But alive.
Free.
Chosen. And somehow that was everything. 6 months later, Jasmine stood in the kitchen of her own catering company, a renovated storefront in the 7th district with gleaming stainless steel counters and her grandmother's recipes framed on the walls. The space smelled of herbs and rising dough, of possibilities made real through hard work and, yes, Victor's financial backing. But the business was hers. Her name on the permits, her vision in every dish, her sweat equity in every satisfied customer. "Boss, the Hofburg order is ready for pickup," called Maya, the sous chef Jasmine had hired from the same struggling immigrant community she'd once served. "And we've got 3 new booking requests for next month." Jasmine smiled, wiping flour from her hands. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible, serving people who looked through her. Now she employed 6 people, catered events across Vienna, and had a waiting list for her services. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd gained visibility by saving a man the city feared, and now that notoriety translated into opportunity. Not that it had been easy. The first 2 months had been brutal. Potential clients who recognized her name and canceled contracts. Health inspectors who arrived with suspicious frequency. Whispered conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. But Jasmine had persisted, let her food speak for itself, and slowly built a reputation that had nothing to do with Viktor Volkov and everything to do with her own skill. Well, mostly nothing to do with Viktor. Tonight was her company's official launch party, a catered event at a gallery where Vienna's cultural elite would sample her fusion of Haitian and Austrian cuisine while pretending they weren't desperately curious about her relationship with the city's most notorious criminal. Viktor arrived precisely at 8, devastating in a charcoal suit, his presence causing the expected ripple through the crowd. But he didn't dominate the room this time. He hung back, let Jasmine shine, played the role of supportive partner rather than powerful patron. She watched him praise her cooking to the Austrian Minister of Culture, saw him deflect questions about his business to redirect attention to her artistry. "You've created something beautiful," he told her during a quiet moment in the kitchen. "I'm proud of you. You funded it. I provided capital. You provided everything else. The vision, the work, the courage to claim your place in a city that tried to keep you invisible." Viktor touched her cheek gently. "This is all you, Golyabushka." The party was a success. By midnight, Jasmine had booked 4 major events and earned grudging respect from critics who'd come prepared to dismiss her as a crime lord's vanity project. She collapsed into a chair after the last guest left, exhausted and exhilarated, while her staff cleaned up around her. Viktor sat beside her, loosening his tie. Ready to go home? Home. The words still carried weight. She'd moved into Viktor's penthouse 3 months ago, a decision that had scandalized her mother and delighted Viktor. The space had transformed under her influence. Warmer, lived in, with books scattered on tables and her grandmother's quilt draped over the austere leather sofa. In the car, Viktor's phone buzzed constantly. Business that never truly stopped, an empire that demanded constant attention. But his organization had changed in subtle ways over the past months. Less violence, more strategic partnerships. Protection rackets converted into legitimate security services. The smuggling operations scaled back, the worst excesses curtailed. "Alexei says the vote on the Eastern Territories went through," Viktor mentioned, scanning a message. "We're officially out of the weapons trade. How do you feel about that?" Lighter. He pocketed the phone, turned his full attention to her. "Strange, isn't it? I spent 15 years building this empire on fear and violence. Now I'm dismantling pieces of it, and instead of feeling weaker, I feel free." Jasmine laced her fingers through his. "You're not dismantling it. You're transforming it. There's a difference." Semantics. "I'm still a criminal, Jasmine. Tonight, while you were serving canapes to diplomats, I was authorizing a raid on a rival's shipment. I'm not reformed. Not really. I know. I'm not naive enough to think you've become a saint." She studied his profile in the passing streetlights. "But you're trying. You're choosing different paths when you can. That's all I asked for." They rode in comfortable silence the rest of the way, Vienna's ancient streets giving way to the modern luxury of Viktor's building. In the penthouse, Jasmine kicked off her heels and padded barefoot to the windows that overlooked the city. Viktor joined her, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. "All of this, the danger, the scrutiny, the compromises. Was it worth it?" Jasmine thought about the knife across her shoulder, the terror in that warehouse, her mother's disappointed calls, the whispered judgments that still followed her. Then she thought about the sunrise mornings in Viktor's arms, the way he'd learned to cook her grandmother's recipes, the business she'd built, the man he was becoming because she'd asked him to try. "Every terrifying, impossible moment," she said. "Yes." Viktor set down the wine, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her with the tenderness of a man who'd learned that strength and gentleness weren't opposites. When he pulled back, his eyes held hers with devastating honesty. "I'm still a criminal. That won't change overnight. Maybe never completely. I know. But you're also the man who attended every catering test run and gave honest feedback. The man who hired Maya's cousin when the police were harassing him. The man who learned Russian lullabies because you thought I might want children someday and they should know their heritage. Jasmine touched his face, feeling the familiar roughness of his jaw. You're not one thing, Victor. You're all of it. The darkness and the light. And I choose all of it. Even knowing what I am, especially knowing what you are. She smiled. Besides, I'm not exactly innocent anymore. I'm the woman who helped plan a trap that got 3 men killed. The woman who profits from connections to the underworld even while running a legitimate business. We're both compromised, Victor. We're both choosing to live in the gray areas. He laughed, the sound genuine and free. When did you become so ruthlessly practical? The moment I decided that moral purity mattered less than honest love. Jasmine pulled away, found her phone, scrolled to the music app. Soft jazz filled the penthouse, the same song that had been playing the night they'd almost kissed over beef stroganoff. Dance with me, she said. Victor pulled her close, and they swayed together in the quiet luxury of his penthouse, Vienna glittering below them like a blanket of stars. No guards watching.
No enemies plotting.
Just 2 people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. I love you, Victor murmured against her hair. My fierce, impossible, perfectly imperfect woman. I love you too. My dangerous, evolving, surprisingly tender man. They danced until the music ended, then kept swaying in the silence, neither willing to let go. Jasmine thought about the gala 6 months ago, about kneeling beside a dying stranger while everyone else watched. She'd saved Viktor Volkov's life that night. But in saving him, she'd somehow saved herself too, had found courage she didn't know she possessed, had claimed visibility she'd been taught to avoid, had discovered that love could exist even in darkness, without being extinguished by it. She'd saved a monster and found a man. He'd been saved by an angel and discovered his humanity. Neither was perfect. Both were transformed. And that was enough. Outside, Vienna slept, unaware that in a penthouse high above the city, 2 unlikely souls had found something that shouldn't exist but did anyway. Hope, partnership, and a future they were building together, one imperfect choice at a time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, it always did. But tonight, they had this, each other, honest and whole, dancing in the darkness and choosing, always choosing, to be better together than they ever could have been apart. And in the end, that choice was the only thing that mattered. Enjoyed this story?
Subscribe.
We've got dozens more about impossible choices, moral complexity, and the messy reality of being human. Don't miss the next one. Click below, and I'll see you soon.